Welcome to the AGvisorPOD.
Hi everyone, this is Rob Saik, CEO of AGvisorPRO, and you're listening to the AGvisorPOD. And this one is really cool. We're talking about solar farms and the implication to the landscape in rural North America. And to talk to us about this, we've got an expert on AGvisorPRO from Michigan, Decatur, Michigan, Matthew Craig. Matthew's a vegetation and management specialist. He is a native plant species specialist, and he's also a sheep farmer and has got a background in ruminant nutrition. And the question that we're tackling came on AGvisorPRO, which I found really interesting, which is around solar farms and how we're going to deal with the vegetation control. So you're in for a real treat here. Welcome to the AGvisorPOD. So a question came on AGvisorPRO the other day, and it was dealing with solar panels, and it was dealing with grazing under solar panels. The question came to us from Bernard, Iowa, and it says, does anyone have experience grazing solar sites? Who do I get a hold of? And how do I source sheep if I don't have enough? The power company in my area is putting up solar energy. Can anybody help me with the right person? And you responded, Matthew, with an answer around how to utilize animals under solar panels. So let's hear a little bit. I thought that was an interesting question and something that is more and more in vogue all the time, which is, alternate sources of power, certainly solar, but these solar farms come with all sorts of, landscape, and then you've got all the weed problems. So what are your thoughts around solar farms, and how do we integrate agriculture with solar farming?
Well, I mean, let's face it, we're not going to stop these farms from coming in. They're going to build them. One of the major concerns right now is that a lot of these are being built on what may or may not be prime ag ground.
Right.
Especially the upper Midwest ones. I mean, Iowa in particular, that's some of the best ag ground in the world.
Yeah.
I know we have one potentially going in down the road from us. Their concern is it's taking 1,000 acres of ag ground out.
1,000 acres of prime ag ground, huh?
Well, I wouldn't call it prime ag ground.
Oh, okay. But
even the farmer that owns it stood up at township meeting and said, this isn't prime ground. 3 years out of 5, it floods.
Okay.
And I don't get a crop. But you get into states like Iowa, Indiana, Illinois, that is prime farm ground.
Yeah.
They're not putting it on the hilly pasture sides down in southern Indiana. They're putting it on pretty good farm ground in upper north central Indiana.
So as these solar panel farms go up, Matthew, they're permanent structures.
They're not permanent.
They're not.
Nope. Every one of the sites, to my knowledge in the U.S. at least, has a clause for the tear down and a bondage for the funds to tear that site down at the end of its lifespan.
So Matthew, what's the time frame that they're looking at in terms of that useful functionality of that solar farm?
I believe most of them plan on a minimum of 25 years. And
okay.
A lot of the newer ones with the newer equipment are looking at 35 years with a 5 or 10 year rider on top of that.
Okay. So it's not permanent, but in the lifespan of a farm, it's pretty long term.
It's long term, yes.
And from a standpoint of the challenges that it creates, you got all this vegetation growing underneath the solar farm. And, if it turns to weeds, the neighbor has got to be just going wild. So what's the answers? How do we take care of the vegetation and the problem vegetation while at the same time trapping the sunlight's energy in a solar farm?
So one of the issues is it does need to be mowed. It needs to maintain a height below the leading edge of the panel. So that would be the location on the panel that is closest to the ground.
Yep.
If you get above that and start to shade the panels, for every square you block, you lose somewhere around 30% of total output. So it's not you block one square on one panel and it's minor output display. It's 30% on that whole line of panels.
So you've got to keep the vegetation down to make sure that you have the efficiency of the solar panels.
Right.
And mowing. But mowing is like, that's expensive.
It definitely appears that, especially on the sites up here in the north, where they're putting in the rotating panels, that mowing, and especially on the eastern half of the country where we get rain, that mowing is fairly expensive, somewhere around $300 per acre per year.
Yeah. And so you're a ruminant nutritional specialist. You've got a background, I think on your profile, it said you're a sheep herder or something like that. And you responded to the question around using livestock in amongst the solar farms to help deal with this issue.
Yep. We are currently talking to several solar companies. We don't currently have any on yet, as most of the ones here in Michigan are still in the planning phases.
Okay.
We did partner with United Agrivoltaics out of New York. They are running, I think, 6,000 or so sheep under panels on the East Coast.
Okay.
But they have sheep in 20 or 26 states right now, including Hawaii.
And how's that working out? So the integration of sheep into the solar farms, how's that working out for them?
It sounds like it's working for them pretty good. They can't source enough sheep right now for all the contracts they have in the works.
So all of a sudden, the solar panel farms are creating a market for sheep?
They're creating them, yeah. I think he told us they could use another 15,000 sheep next year.
Holy cow. I should say holy sheep. Holy cow. That's wild. So tell me, is if we roll this forward, what happens to the sheep?
In the long run, I mean, personally, I doubt we'll ever get enough sheep in the United States to cover all the planned panels. In the eastern United States, it's roughly 3 sheep per acre as a conservative estimate on what you're going to need. They're talking about putting 10 plus acres, 10 million plus acres, which is 30 million plus sheep. There's only 5 million sheep in the country right now.
Did you just say 10 million acres under solar panel?
I believe that's the goal by 2050.
Wow. Wow, that's a chunk of land, isn't it?
Yep, but when you sit down and do the math, it's about 4% of ag ground.
Still significant, you know? And so the sheep are a way to control the vegetation. Is there any special management we need to have in position to deal with the sheep? I suppose water is there. And then, any comments around that? I mean, this is fascinating for me. I'm learning a ton right now.
Some of that is going to depend on the sizes of the sites. The East Coast predominantly right now is small sites, 20 to 50 acres or smaller.
Yeah.
Much of the upper Midwest right now is looking at large scale utility, which is going to be anything that starts at 500 acres and could go up, as of right now, up to 16,000 is the largest site I know of.
So you're in Michigan, so you got winter. It's not like you're in North Carolina. So you have the sheep grazing in amongst the solar farms for the summertime. What happens in the winter? Farmers got to be set up to winterize and deal with these animals all winter long, right?
Yep, that is one of the major concerns in the north. I've heard some options of shipping them to southern sites for the winter.
Oh.
It would be an option, but I still wonder, well, what are they doing the other 6 months on that solar site? Are they pulling sheep off them, or are there already sheep on them? If there's already sheep on the site, do you really need more sheep on the site?
Yeah. Well, it'd be a lot of counting of sheep. Tell me about other livestock that might, I guess cattle is a no-go because cattle would be too destructive to the solar panels.
They're trying some cattle. Yeah, I think Indiana in particular has been trying some cattle, and there might be a few other areas. The issue is raising the panels high enough that the cows can go under them. So I think a company out of that's doing one of the larger sites to the south of us, he told me to raise the panels high enough would cost them multi-million dollars.
So you can, it makes common sense.
It's something like, every foot you raise the panels, it's $5,000 or $10,000 per acre additional costs.
Yeah.
And by the time you raise them from 18 or 24 inches to 48 or more inches, it gets pretty expensive pretty quick.
Okay. So cows are out, sheep are in. What other livestock? Goats. Yeah.
Goats tend to climb, so they don't tend to be useful on panels when they're climbing on them.
So that would be a bad idea. Yeah.
Yep. United Agrivoltaics is working with some coon type pigs in New York.
Okay.
Or some of the pasture-based type smaller pig breeds. They're trying. There's a few poultry operations, broilers and meat turkeys primarily. Again, I think limitations there are going to be on size. I think it works well on a 20-acre site. I don't know that I want to raise however many chickens I would need on a 5,000-acre site.
Well, the coyotes would sure be happy anyways.
Yep. And then obviously there's also bees.
So the idea here is to utilize livestock in conjunction with solar farms. That's cool. Your background lends itself to helping guys understand, or farmers understand, what to do and what to plant in these areas. Can you talk a little bit about your passion and how you fit into this new discussion?
Well, hey, I've been raising sheep about 15 years. I love doing it most of the time. I'm also a native plant specialist. I grow native seed for a living. A lot of our Midwestern sites are requiring native vegetation.
Yeah.
But it's been a good 80 years since most people east of the Mississippi have grazed native vegetation.
Well, that's our consideration. We need to have the right kind of vegetation planted in the first place underneath the solar farms. So that's an important selection criteria.
Yep. I just looked at one for a couple of sites. About half their vegetation was either unpalatable or toxic.
Wow, another consideration. This is an amazing discussion. So you're on AGvisorPRO, and what do you like about it? Why are you on it? And what do you think about the platform that we're building?
I'm still getting used to it. Looked at a few questions. It's interesting to see different answers that come in from different parts of the world too. What they do in Canada definitely isn't the same as what we do in Michigan, and what they do in South Dakota doesn't necessarily translate to New York.
Yep.
But sometimes the ideas can be adapted to work in both places.
Well, this has been just fascinating. I think we'll circle back again on this topic. This might extend itself into a long form discussion. I want to thank you very much for being with us today. Thanks a lot, Matthew. It was great.
Thank you.
Wasn't that interesting? Wow, what a conversation we had. And there's a lot more information that needs to be digested and dissected and turned over with respect to, what are the implications of solar farms. I was shocked at how big these tracts of land were going to be occupied by solar farms, and then all the considerations of how to take care of the vegetation underneath it. And you got to have considerations of what's happening in the south versus the north. So we hope you enjoyed this issue, and remember to download AGvisorPRO, and you can reach experts like Matthew Craig from Michigan on AGvisorPRO. Till next time, Rob, over and out.